Why do you always say the most right after someone is rude to you? Because the real loss is usually not the comment. It is the reaction that outruns your judgment. The Stoic move is physical before it is verbal. Slow the body, lower the tone, use one clean line, then stop feeding the moment. Most people do not lose control because they had no answer. They lose it because their body answered first. And by the end of this video, you will know when one line is enough and when less access is the real answer. The first impact is real, but it is not your final response. That is one of the oldest Stoic disciplines, and it matters even more now because modern disrespect travels straight into your nervous system. A sharp tone lands, your chest tightens, your mind starts writing a speech, and judgment falls behind adrenaline. Epictetus taught that the first impression arrives on its own, but your agreement with it is still yours. So the method in this video is simple. Interrupt the surge. Name the behavior once. Then decide whether this person gets more engagement from you. That is how to respond to rude people without turning one bad moment into an hour of emotional leakage. Pace first. Words second. When someone is rude, the first temptation is speed. You want to fix the tension, defend your position, or hit back before the moment makes you look weak. But fast reactions usually serve the moment, not your dignity. They come out hotter than you intended, longer than you needed, and shakier than you realize. That is why the first Stoic move is physical before it is verbal. Do not speak from the first surge. Breathe once. Drop your shoulders. Unclench your jaw. Let your next sentence come from a slower body. That tiny delay changes everything because your tone stops sounding chaste. Your words stop begging to be understood, and the other person no longer feels like they are driving your state. Imagine someone cuts across you with a dismissive line, and you feel the instant urge to prove you are not small. The old pattern is to rush in and over-explain your intent. The stronger pattern is quieter. You let one breath create space. You answer from a lower tone. You say less. Peak moments like this decide whether the exchange belongs to your judgment or to your chemistry. Never answer from the first surge. Your tone must drop before your words arrive. If this hits home, subscribe, because we are building a place for people who want quiet power instead of emotional leakage. Delay protects dignity. A lot of rude moments feel urgent, even when they are not. That urgency is part of the trap. The pressure says, answer now, text back now, clear it up now, prove yourself now. But urgency is often just emotional smoke. If you respond inside it, you usually donate more energy than the moment deserves. So another Stoic move is refusing immediate access to your full reaction. Sometimes the best response is not silence forever. It is silence until your mind is back in command. You can answer later. You can answer shorter. You can answer after the heat is gone. This matters because rude people often borrow power from your instant availability. The faster you react, the more they can feel they still have your state. So when the moment is hot, buy time on purpose. You do not owe every tone an immediate answer. You do not owe every jab a same-minute correction. You do not owe every provocation your live nervous system. A simple pause can sound like strength when it is chosen. A delayed reply can sound like self-command when it is clean. The goal is not avoidance. The goal is refusing to let the first impact author the whole exchange. Do not feed the moment. That is different from suppressing yourself. It means you stop giving extra energy to something that was already below your standard. Boundary before biography. This is where many thoughtful people lose power. They think clarity means explaining the whole story behind their reaction. So they start describing their intentions, their history, their stress, their reasons, and all the things that make them understandable. But rude behavior does not usually improve because you became more explainable. It often improves only when the line becomes clear. Stoic anchor first. Name it once. Your boundary should arrive before your autobiography. Instead of telling them everything you meant, tell them what will and will not continue. I'll answer that when the tone improves. I'm not continuing this conversation in that tone. Let's keep this sharp, not personal. These lines work because they protect your standard without dragging your private self onto the table. You are not asking to be interpreted correctly. You are defining the condition for further access. That difference is huge. One position says, "Please understand me." The other says, "This is the line." And people feel that difference immediately. A rude person may still dislike your boundary. That is fine. The point is not to make the line pleasant. The point is to make it real. If you always leave moments like this feeling drained, it is often because you kept giving biography where a boundary was enough. Calm is command, not surrender. Once you have control of your pace, the next mistake is turning the moment into a courtroom. Most rude people do not suddenly become fair because you gave a longer explanation. They often become more comfortable watching you work for basic respect. So your next move is not a speech. It is one clean line. Name it once. That was unnecessary. That line works because it does not chase approval, and it does not pretend the behavior was normal. It names the tone without joining it. It marks the line without performing outrage. And then it gives silence room to do what extra words usually ruin. Marcus Aurelius kept returning to the idea that your mind doesn't have to be dragged by the first blow. That matters here because the strongest response is often the one that does not keep proving itself. Picture someone throwing a cheap jab in front of other people and waiting to see whether you scramble. Most people start explaining context, intention, history, and fairness. But that long defense quietly accepts the other person's frame. Now the whole room watches you argue for your own dignity. Instead, you say, "That was unnecessary." Then you stop. No second paragraph. No shaky laugh. No repair performance. Silence carries the weight. Technique number 2 lives here because this is where people feel the identity shift. You are no longer trying to win the exchange through volume. You are showing that basic respect is not a debate topic. Name it once. Do not build a speech around it. Do not turn every provocation into a full engagement. Not every rude person deserves the main stage in your mind. Some people are not confused. They are testing range. They want to know how easily they can pull your mood, redirect your energy, or make you abandon your center. That is why not reacting to rude people is not always passivity. Sometimes it is precision. Stoic calm power is not the absence of feeling. It is the refusal to make every feeling public. There are moments when the cleanest answer is a short line. There are also moments when the cleanest answer is reduced participation. You stop explaining. You stop circling back. You stop giving the moment a second life in your body. Seneca warned that anger accelerates damage because once speed enters the mind, judgment weakens. That is exactly what rude people often count on. They do not need to beat your logic. They only need to speed you up. So ask a better question, not, "How do I win this exchange?" Ask, "What response protects my state?" Sometimes that still means speaking. Sometimes it means ending the interaction with less theater than the other person expected. You can keep your position without keeping the argument alive. You can protect your dignity without giving the moment a dramatic ending. And that is often what frustrates rude behavior most. It does not get the emotional harvest it came for. Patterns decide access. One rude moment can be corrected. Repeated rude behavior has to be judged differently. This is where many people make their costliest mistake. They keep responding to a pattern as if it were a one-time misunderstanding. So every new incident gets a fresh explanation, a fresh benefit of the doubt, and a fresh chance to drain them again. But repeated disrespect is data. At some point, you are no longer dealing with a bad moment. You are dealing with a pattern that is teaching you something about the other person's relationship to your dignity. That is where the third peak arrives. Not more explanation, less access. I'm not continuing this conversation like this. That line matters because it ends the fantasy that better wording will solve repeated contempt. It also moves the center of power away from their tone and back to your choice. Imagine the same cutting style keeps showing up again and again. Each time, you try to stay fair. Each time, you explain more carefully. Each time, the behavior returns. Now the Stoic move changes. You end the exchange. You answer less. You delay more. You stop being instantly reachable. You reduce your openness to someone who keeps proving they misuse it. Repeated disrespect earns less access, not more explanation. This is not revenge. It is consequence. It is not coldness. It is calibration. And it protects something many people lose without noticing. Because your nervous system stops learning that bad behavior still gets rewarded with your full presence. Calm is command, not performance. A lot of people hear this kind of advice and think it means becoming silent, distant, or emotionally frozen. That is not the point. The Stoic response is not about becoming hard to prove you are strong. It is about becoming governed enough that you choose the form, speed, and weight of your response. Sometimes the right answer is warm and direct. Sometimes it is brief and firm. Sometimes it is no answer until later. Sometimes it is the end of the conversation. The skill is not one perfect line for every rude person. The skill is state ownership. You decide whether the moment gets your breath, your words, your time, or your future access. That is why real calm feels heavy. It does not rush to display itself. It does not need to punish to feel powerful. It does not confuse extra words with extra authority. When your pace stays yours, your tone stays level, and your line stays clean, rude behavior loses much of the leverage it usually has. People may still speak badly, but they stop authoring your body. Here is the myth. If you stay calm, people will think you are weak. Usually the opposite is true. What reads as weakness is not calm. It is emotional negotiability. It is the hurried defense. It is the anxious over-explanation. It is the visible need to be cleared in real time. Stoic silence is not surrender. Stoic silence is controlled non-cooperation with disrespect. Calm is not passivity. Calm is command over timing, tone, and access. The goal was never to look unbothered. Neither the goal is to remain self-commanded. So how to respond to rude people is not mainly a language problem. It is a pace problem first, a tone problem second, and an access problem when the pattern repeats. Slow the body. Name the behavior once. Then stop feeding the moment. And if the disrespect keeps returning, stop offering the same level of access to someone who keeps misusing it. Rude people may still speak, but they do not get to write your nervous system anymore. Watch the next video on spotting repeated disrespect patterns. Because once you can see the pattern early, you stop wasting calm on people who have already shown you the truth.